Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. We've been getting a ton of details on Battlefield 6 over the past few days, and the weekend was no exception to that. We got a bunch of new information over the past 24 or 48 hours or so, detailing some pretty controversial topics when it comes to Battlefield 6, and the devs have actually given us some pretty solid transparency into how exactly they're approaching some of these hot topics in the community. So first up here, we've now got official information directly from the devs themselves, and then also some creators who asked them about it directly at the Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal event regarding skill-based matchmaking. Of course, that dreaded phrase that basically impacts every single multiplayer online title in gaming right now. And quite frankly, we all know it's a system that's not going to go anywhere because it does make games a ton of money. It does statistically help them with retention on the business end. So like, skill-based matchmaking is going to be a thing everywhere. It's just a matter of how strict is it? And we know in Call of Duty, it's turned up to 101. They broke the dial and went over by one. Other games are a little bit more lenient with it, but we now have info on how skill-based matchmaking, if you want to call it that, is going to work in Battlefield 6. And this article is from Insider Gaming, sort of corroborating a few sources here, saying Battlefield 6 will have skill-based matchmaking, but will be different per game mode here. So let's see what Tom Henderson has to say. But announced that Battlefield 6 will have some skill-based matchmaking in the multiplayer side of the game. This news comes directly from EA from the press briefing during the Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal event, where they broke down how skill-based matchmaking is going to work. Charlie Intel reported, and Tom Henderson corroborates here, it was said that skill-based matchmaking in Battlefield 6 is going to focus on 4 key areas. So when you are matchmaking here, essentially, this is what it's going to be looking at and where it's going to determine where you go in a game. If you're going to be on one team versus the other and whatnot. Skill-based matchmaking in Battlefield, as we'll talk about, is more emphasizing team balancing. It seems like it'll be similar to how in 2042 it works like that, according to a handful of sources that we'll be covering here. But they're going to focus on your ping, on player location, server availability, and then some skill is going to be factored into it as well. So they don't give an order of importance here if ping is king or if it's whatever, but your ping to whatever server is available is going to factor in. Your location and where you are in proximity to that data center is going to be a factor, and of course how good or how bad you are at the game is going to factor in. Now Call of Duty says they do a system similar to this, but we just know from our experience that it doesn't always seem to emphasize a lot of these other factors outside of skill, right? It was said that the matchmaking factors will vary based on each game mode and then also player counts. Of course, as you have a larger player pool, it's easier to enact skill-based matchmaking and have it be strict because there's a larger player pool to pull from to give you that most ideal skill level-headedness, if you will, that equal skill situation basically. Whereas if the player base is smaller, skill-based matchmaking can't be as functional, for lack of better word there. While it's unclear precisely what that means when it comes to different game modes and player counts, it seems like there will be both general skill based before entering a game, and then also the team balanced system too, or team based matchmaking. EA previously weighed in on the discussion around skill based matchmaking in Battlefield 6 back in April, specifically regarding team based matchmaking. Back then, EA said that skill based matchmaking would be used to make more balanced teams rather than implementing a strong skill based matchmaking across an entire band of players, although some skill is required when you are matchmaking to determine where you should be landing. David Serlin, one of the lead producers on Battlefield 6, said on the matter back then that we need a skill value to make balanced teams, no matter the ranges of skills total on the server. Battlefield is at its best when you play the all-out war modes with friends and different types of players. We don't want to limit that. So essentially here, it seems like skill-based matchmaking is really going to impact, okay, are you going to be on the team that's stacked full of great players, or is it going to try and balance them out where this team's got 3 higher tier players, this team's got 4 higher tier players, but this team maybe has a few more medium to average players, and this team maybe has a few more new or lesser skilled players. Call of Duty attempts this, and they do it terribly, where oftentimes it just ends up the best player gets put with the absolute worst players, and they consider that balance, like the best player has to hard carry. That's not necessarily going to be the layout and the breakdown here with this, based on the descriptions that we know. Like I said, others who actually attended this event did give us a little bit more insight into what exactly to expect with skill-based matchmaking. And by the way, I should mention, first off, seriously appreciate all the love, all the support on the Battlefield content here as of late. Of course, we've been posting a bunch of it lately. We'll be doing even more so here with the beta coming up. There's lots of details to cover, and I want to do my best to give you guys the most accurate info for Battlefield 6, as I do with COD here. So really do appreciate all the support. If you guys enjoy this video, a like rating, of course, is always appreciated. And if you're new here, you want to help get us one step closer to 1 million subscribers, and of course, stay informed every day, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So next up here, we do have Tactical Brett detailing this a little bit more, actually quoting the article we just read, saying skill-based matchmaking in Battlefield should not be conflated with skill-based matchmaking in Warzone / Call of Duty or the wider FPS space. It's literally just team balancing here. So you hear the term, oh, Battlefield 6 is going to have skill-based matchmaking, and you might go, oh, great. Here we go again. You know, it's going to be a sweat fest 24/7. Not necessarily the case here. Tom does reply and say, it seems like two entirely different matchmaking systems to me, so I hope they clarify further unless you've got a direct quote from the event. Surely one of the 4 metrics being server availability means that this is matchmaking before you're in a server and thus can't be fully team balancing, and that would be after you're in a server. And Britt responds saying, they are the exact same matchmaking systems from previous Battlefield, so if you're familiar with that of 2042, etc. In fact, I had heard from the event they intended on having even more filters for players to choose from. So team balancing, yes. Skill deciding the map mode, sweatiness of what you play, no. And that's directly from Tactical Brit, who interacted with the devs and asked about this topic there. So a little bit more clarification into the matter itself. Now, skill-based matchmaking is not the only hot topic that Battlefield has addressed recently. They also went through, and one dev in specific actually detailed the server browser here and how exactly it's going to function, what their plans are currently. The response to this has a lot of people, you know, a little bit hot, I would say, I think is a safe way to put it here. So this info is coming from Alexia Christofi. She was talking at the actual Battlefield 6 multiplayer reveal event, been super active on Twitter, answering things, detailing things. And she initially posted saying, gonna talk about our server browser later today, but first want to understand what everyone's reasons is for wanting a server browser so I can make sure I explain everything we're doing effectively. And essentially this is the thread that she ended up posting, saying, feels like the most important things when it comes to the server browser is persistent servers, a sense of community and a way to play together, being able to choose specific maps and modes, being able to filter by ping and server fullness, support for low pop regions. More to share on this in the future, but I think our server browser solution answers all these wants. Yes, it's via portal and shows community experiences, but these can award full XP, will be front and center in our main menu, not hidden, and it will allow you to filter and search for specific things you want. Again, more to share on this in the future, but seeing all your replies, I think what we have caters to the majority of use cases. We can talk more about if and why it feels like it's not enough at a later date. So here's why this has players worried to an extent. It's because it's not supporting the official Battlefield servers for Battlefield 6. This is going to be through Portal and offer the community services. Now, it does award full XP like what you get on a standard official Battlefield 6 server, but that means if you want to play the fun experiences and all the wacky stuff that the community creates or mess around with other things, you can do so absolutely easily through the main menu tab to the server browser. However, when it comes to just core gameplay, you're going to be up to the random maps that it selects, the random modes that it selects or whatever as you're going through a certain playlist, or you'll be queuing the specific rule sets of the standard modes there. There's not as much freedom when you're queuing into that. You might get a map you hate, you have to back out, search again. You got to hope that you end up in that right map that you're looking to play or whatever the case is there. So it's a little bit more restrictive when it's not the official servers being hosted on that server browser, as well as all the community stuff. So that is something that has absolutely been a hot topic here. It seems like a lot of the responses to Alexia's initial information here is, okay, this is awesome for that community side, but can we also have a server browser supporting the general game's base servers and base modes as well, so we have more freedom there, so we can queue one map over and over again, or queue certain modes with certain maps over and over again, so that there's a little bit more you know, control over players there. Or when it comes to official gameplay, some regions not having as much support as others, they might just be stuck having to play on the server browser with community events and community maps and whatnot, and community modes and builds rather than the official stuff, because they can't find enough matches on the official servers themselves. So there are some interesting, a little bit more niche problems there, but it's not a small niche by any means, because this has been one of the hottest topics that I've seen discussed here on Twitter over the past few days. But regardless, at least it is nice to see the transparency here, for sure, something that we're not always getting in other games, Call of Duty, and the willingness to continue the conversation. Alexia mentions there, of course, that they're going to revisit this in the future and offer up more details here, and maybe they see the responses saying, okay, but we also want official server support here too, and that's something that maybe they go in a little bit more on down the road. Of course, if that's the case, I'll be sure to keep you guys up to date with everything going on here in Battlefield 6. So feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications so you never miss a video. And if you enjoyed this one, be sure to drop a like on your way out. But that's going to wrap things up. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.